There you go. There you go. And I'm sure you just heard Miss Zoom say recording in progress because she has to let everybody know her business. So, I just wanted to just reiterate that. Welcome into this space, everyone. We're celebrating International Men's Day. Thank you so much for lending us this short amount of time of your Friday night. Like I said, it's Friday night and we feel all right. I know that folks are celebrating different things, birthday celebrations. Shout out to everyone celebrating a birthday this week or today on the Zoom tonight. And we just want to welcome folks into the space who are celebrating holidays, who are spending time with family, friends, chosen or otherwise. Thank you all for joining us on International Men's Day. Happy International Men's Day to everyone that's celebrating tonight. And I can't thank y'all enough for joining us. I love the level of participation. It shows us that folks are willing and ready to engage in this conversation. Thank y'all so much for turning on your camera. Let me not feel like I'm the only one who wants their face seen tonight. I know I'm moderating and everything, but we'd love to see folks' face on the call right now and on the Zoom right now as we get into this discussion. So we are gathered here tonight. We have like I said, so I'm Theo Brown, by the way. Let me reiterate that. Pronouns he, him, his. I'm the Public Relations Officer for Caribbean Equality Project. We're a New York City-based organization that avidly advocates for the Caribbean LGBTQ plus voices. We can't do this work without the support of our team members as well as our leadership team and of course the entire body that we have both locally in the US and of course across the Caribbean and other interested regions. So we just want to thank you all so much again for coming into this space. We can't appreciate your presence enough. All right, so I'm moderating tonight. So I want to shout out real quickly two of our the two of the organizations slash hosts of tonight's event, right? A discussion on men's mental health for International Men's Day. And we're gonna kick it off with speaking to Christine of the Breadfruit Collective, right? Now there she is. I'm gonna allow her to speak real quickly about herself and her organization so that we can get this conversation on the way. Christine?
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much, Theo. Happy International Men's Day. And I reiterate, happy birthday to all those celebrating. Thank you so much for taking time out of your busy, busy week to be here with us. It means so much to me. I'm Christine Samwaru. My pronouns are she, hers. And I'm the founder of the Breadfruit Collective, which is an emerging NGO in Guyana that aims to address gender and environmental justice issues. And we know that although I'm focused on women and girls, I know that we all in society continue to suffer at the hands of our patriarchal norms that we have in our society, be it male, female, non-conforming, patriarchal ideas continue to harm us in many ways. And so I know that in order for us to address the issues that we want to create our society to be a just and sustainable one, we must engage males. And so I've decided to partner with the Glenn Family Foundation to have this conversation. And I think it's the perfect opportunity given that today is International Men's Day and it's being celebrated under the theme of having better relationship with women and other people. And I think it's really important for us, especially as young people, to continue to have conversation and continue to learn and unlearn the things that we grew up thinking is right. So this is the first of many conversation I hope to have with males. I think it's important for me as the founder of the Breadfruit Collective to create a space whereby men and people who are facing the issues, that I create a space that they're able to tell their stories and their perspectives and experience. So with that, I would just like to say thank you all so much for being so willing to be here tonight. I appreciate you all so much in your various capacity. You continue to inspire me. And I have a younger brother, and I hope that whatever you're saying here tonight, I'm gonna make sure I share this video with him. And I'm so happy that you all exist, and I'm so grateful for all the work that you do. You inspire me so much. So with that, I'll hand it over to Theo.
All right, thank you, Christine, for that illustrious introduction. We are the ones that paint our own narratives, our own stories, our own pictures of ourselves, and I can't do anybody any justice by introducing them. That's something that the onus of the responsibility, it's definitely on them. So thank you so much for those kind words about yourself. One of the things we're learning to do, especially this holiday season, as we continue to go through the throes of this pandemic, is to give ourselves a little self-love and a little more self-care. And that's one way we can do it, right? So with that being said, I'm going to popcorn it over to Darren J. Glenn of the Glenn Family Foundation so that they can introduce themselves. Go ahead, Darren.
All right, thank you so much, Theo, and thank you so much, Christine, for kicking this off and giving us this platform to really engage on issues that really affect how we can create a more just and more sustainable future. We can't really have conversations about bringing to bear a better Caribbean without addressing the issues of patriarchy and the effects that that has on men in our region. So this is just a wonderful opportunity that we just jumped at the opportunity to do. So as you guys can see, I'm Darren Glenn. I'm the co-founder of Glenn Family Foundation, and we work on social, environmental, and economic issues in the Caribbean as a way of bringing about the Caribbean of the future. And we don't want to focus on economic growth without thinking about the most marginalized people in our society. We don't want to focus on creating equity for the most marginalized people in our society without thinking about the environment. In order to create a sustainable future, we need to focus on all three and make sure that we're not amplifying one aspect of Caribbean life at the expense of the other. Because we don't want a bunch of queer people in the Caribbean to get rich by having oil refineries. Like what kind of sustainable future is that? Or we don't want we don't want to make everybody rich by, killing out our endangered species. We want to make sure that we are living in harmony with each other and nature. And we can do that in a way that brings about prosperity. At least I believe so. And Christine and I really share a vision of environmental work that very intentionally takes up social issues. And so it's always a privilege to partner with Christine. And it's always a privilege to just have these really generative discussions about what the Caribbean of the future looks like and what kind of Caribbean we want to give to the next generation and the generation after that. So yeah, it's really my privilege to be here for International Men's Day and fostering a conversation, particularly about our mental health. The Caribbean, we really don't have consistent conversations about our mental health, and we have so much need for it. There's just so much background trauma that we're all dealing with because of these layers of historical violence that have happened that we've never actually disentangled. Instead, we found these really harmful coping mechanisms and ways to actually reproduce that harm. So I think spaces like this and resources like the resources we're about to name for men and for boys in the Caribbean are not just important, but they're actually critical for moving forward as a region and really reversing these cycles of violence in our communities. So yeah, I'm very happy to be here. And for the sake of time, I'll turn it back to Theo so that we can kind of hear about our wonderful other panelists here. But thank you guys so much for being here. Really appreciate your presence here and your willingness to have this conversation.
There you go. Thank you, Darren. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I appreciate that coming in. And definitely, those introductions are very well said, well spoken, because they paint the picture as to the type of content we're going to be discussing tonight. I do have just a few, I want to say, norms that we want to observe. I don't want to have a rules on a Friday night. It's like 6 somewhere. It's drink 30 somewhere. Literally, it's almost 6:30 my time. So it's drink 30 somewhere. I don't really want to have rules tonight. But I just want to encourage folks, if you're not, if you don't have the mic, I have the mic right now. So everybody's being respectful and have their mute button on. I appreciate that. right? Because we want to make sure we have a one mic situation unless we're speaking in tandem about the same topic slash issue, right? So that's good. If you want to put your video on, that is a-okay. We are recording this session. Please don't feel afraid or feel timid about expressing your opinions once we have question and answer section, as well as voicing your concern in the chat, right? You can choose to have your video on or not. It's up to you. We are recording this in order to publish it later, with respect of the folks that are on the call that may not feel comfortable with us going live on one of our respective platforms. We know, the Glenn Family Foundation and the Breadfruit Collective has a thriving social media platform across the stratosphere, the blogosphere and everything. So we want to thank you all for that. So with that being said, I want to just get us started tonight with just a brief look into International Men's Day real quickly. What is this and why are we celebrating this, right? So based on my research, it was, this is a day that kicked off in somewhere around 1992, right? So we're now in the throes of it, almost at the 30-year anniversary for celebrating International Men's Day. Of course, based on what I'm seeing, we have to give kudos to persons like Thomas Foster, way back in the 90s, that initiated this project, right? And had the idea to celebrate men in general in the middle of November, because we are technically in the middle of November, all those years ago. So the longest running celebration of today is actually observed in the country of Malta. Now, for my Caribbean folks, not Malta the beverage, not Malta the drink. We're not promoting any brands here, hello, but we're talking about Malta the country. It's something that they adopted and ran with, right, at the turn of the 90s. So actually, we have to give the Trinidadians, of course, on the call, the biggest kudos and celebrations. Of course, one of the hosts for tonight is Trinidadian, and their brother is Trinidadian as well. So we just want to give them that kudos tonight. Thank y'all, for taking the initiative to start this day back in the 90s to celebrate men in an occasion like this. Just as Darren said, and that must be reiterated tonight, that it's International Men's Day, but our focus for this specific one is on men's mental health. A topic that's breaking out of its taboo shell slowly but surely. Right? So that's a little rundown on International Men's Day. I want to go ahead now and just speak real quickly about our speakers for tonight, right? And our panelists, right? So we have Tarik Braithwaite, or Braithwaite, I want to say. Make sure I'm getting that right. Tarik, if I'm butchering it, you can always type up and say, correct that, let me say it myself. Right? So we have Tarik on the call tonight. And Tarik is a Guyanese-born poet, artist, and author. He's a fanatic when it comes to the world of literature and has worked overtime to make English a global standout for the country of Guyana. For those of us who are on the call who may not be familiar with the geography of this earth, Guyana is one of those Caribbean countries that is a mainland territory on the continent of South America. So as a law graduate at the age of 25, Tarik successfully published his collection of poems, Trapped in Thought, which has been nominated this year, 2021, for the Reader's Choice Awards, right? When he's not indulging in his craft, he's a young poet dedicated to tutoring and works with the ministry in his country to successfully carry out these tasks. Next, we have Romario Hastings. I want to say Professor Romario Hastings. We were joking on the call earlier with the panelists that came on, and we do have some academics on the call that have a teaching and academic background, but prefer to just be called just by their first name. Not to get too serious. But I just want to say for Romario Hastings, is a youth hailing from an indigenous community in Upper Mazaruni, Region 7. Right? Romario is a budding environmentalist and an ardent advocate for the promotion and revalorization of indigenous culture. A graduate of the University of Guyana, Romario works with the Environmental Protection Agency focused on the regularization of the mining industry. He believes fostering more human-nature relationships is essential to the overall well-being of humanity. Now, this belief manifests through his hobbies, such as photography, nature-based tourism, and reconnecting with indigenous spirituality. So already we have those relationships going on because clearly, Romario can definitely work in alignment with the Glenn Family Foundation because they have similar themes in their line of interests with work, right? And next we have Chris, right? Chris is gonna definitely have a chance to answer some questions for us later. Now, Chris is a young Guyanese artist who works predominantly with oil paints to explore the world of contemporary art. You know, one of the things we're on this call together, we're as panelists and speakers, we're able to promote or kind of represent our organization. So mine is the Caribbean Equality Project and my country. Chris, in his background, is representing the art that he so eloquently, so effortlessly, so artistically, you know, creates and cultivates in his time, right? So, you know, if you see that background right there, you see some of the artwork that I'm describing that Chris does in their spare time slash for as a craft. Now, his art is heavily evolved from merely being aesthetic to the idea of storytelling. Now, Chris would say, I like to create stunning images to hold your interest while allowing your mind to wander, and use color as something truly fascinating, you know, to exemplify movement and, you know, highlight certain concepts of the environment. There we go with environmentalism again, and mental well-being, and of course, individuality, right? All in the hopes to convey some feeling to the audience. Next up, we have Bryan Glenn. So of course, as you can tell, the name Glenn, he's of course related to Darren, right? They are brothers in the cause, heading up the Glenn Family Foundation, right? So we have Bryan on the Zoom as well. Now, Bryan is a New York-based Trinidadian American entrepreneur in the real estate and nonprofit sectors, invested in sustainable and ethical construction, green placemaking, and mitigating the impact of land development on local ecosystems. As the co-founder of and chairman of Delgado and Glenn LLC, as well as the co-founder and director of development of the Glenn Family Foundation, Bryan's work explores the potential of new sustainable and ethical land development practices to support environmental integrity throughout the US and of course the Caribbean. All right. Now, I believe that's all our speakers tonight. And with that being said, I just wanted to get into the topic of discussion. So, of course, we're covering mental health for International Men's Day. This is our way of commemorating and acknowledging and recognizing this celebration for the men on this Zoom tonight and out there listening to us. So, what are our views on mental health? That's where we're going to kick off tonight. What are our views on mental health, right? And my views that I know Darren has expressed his views briefly, and so has Christine, to kind of help us to segue into this question. What are our views on mental health? For me personally, mental health is important. It has not been the forefront of many discussions for eons now, especially where men, no matter if you're cisgendered, transgendered, no matter how you identify as a man, it has not been at the forefront of our conversations for quite some time now. I know growing up, it was taboo. It wasn't something discussed. And I grew up in the island of Jamaica. And, you know, if you can't already tell, and, you know, it wasn't something of main discussion. It's not something you talk about at a dinner table. You're feeling a certain way mentally. You're having a bad day, essentially. You're dealing with bouts of depression or anxiety. That stuff wasn't diagnosed because it wasn't talked about. And of course, it couldn't be treated because you can't heed what you can't reveal, right? Or you can't heed what you don't reveal. And, you know, it wasn't a point of discussion. For us, and I know for a lot of us on the call, some of us are still based in the Caribbean or other places of the world where religion is very, very heavily the mainstay and the foundation of our societies. We were to just start to pray about it, talk to the pastor about it, and we just gonna pray fast and, you know, plead the blood of Jesus and or your respective religious deity, and that was it. So, you know, that was our view on mental health. Clearly, in the 16 years I've been out of not living in Jamaica, that viewpoint has evolved, right? We're now talking about therapy, especially, and remember, no matter how the world looks right now, no matter if people have stopped wearing their masks or refuse to take a vaccine, whatever the case may be, we're still in the throes of a pandemic. So because of that pandemic, we have now have some things highlighted about mental health and the need to discuss it, especially where men are concerned, right? And of course, we can't forget the women that, you know, help us to, of course, live on this earth and of course be here, period. So with that being said, I'm going to kick it off to one of our panelists. You know, what are your views on mental health? Let's start there. Who has the mic? Let's see. Darren went, so we're gonna.
I can start as well.
There you go.
Yeah, thank you. All right. Yeah, and I'm going to turn it over to Bryan immediately. So Bryan, get ready. But you know, my views on mental health have always been evolving. have been evolving for a long time. You know, and it's right now I understand it as something that's just essential for like a person's proper functioning, right? It's kind of like taking a shower or brushing your teeth, or, you know, in my case, twisting my hair, twisting my roots, or coloring my hair. It's like something that you do in order to like maintain yourself, your proper functioning. It's not something that you deal with when there's a crisis. And that is something that I'm learning a lot, that like this is something that we have to like continuously work on. So that being said, I don't want to take up too much space. I'm going to popcorn it quickly to Bryan before we turn it over to our other panelists.
Thank you, Darren, and thank you everyone else for having us here today. Like Darren said, so he is my older brother, and we lived together for a long time. So I guess just comparing what we went through during childhood and then becoming an adult, and you know, you have this light bulb that clicks on and it says, wait, something's not wrong. Something doesn't line up with my behavior. And you see all of these past decisions that you've made, or past memories, and the past trauma, right? We're fortunate enough to now have the information to understand what we went through, and what we went through was wrong, right? And we had to seek out this information, especially as a Caribbean male. We don't talk about this in the family unit, and we don't talk about this in the church much at all. You know, mental health is just as important as physical health, because there's something physically wrong in the brain. When people have a mental illness, there's something physically wrong in the brain, where the neurons are not firing correctly. That is something that needs to be taken seriously. Or there's a chemical imbalance. We have bipolar disorder and many other mental disorders that physically affect the brain. So we need to have this discussion because lives depend on it, and future generations depend on it. And I believe knowledge is power, knowledge is truth, and it can set us free in the next generations to come. So that's my my viewpoint takeaway on that.
There you go. Well put. Well put. Thank you. Thank you for the input thus far. We want to hear from, let's see, Romario. Romario, can you chime in on this question real quickly before we transition to our next points of interest? What are your views on mental health?
Hi, good night, everybody. Good and happy International Men's Day, of course, wherever you are tuning in from. So I want to just quickly add to the discussion, of course, to say that I think mental health has been a silent killer, which we been have not gotten the most attention as it should. And I am really glad that we're able to start a conversation with such as this. But I think it is something that is very much essential and important for our overall well-being. Often we focus on the physical and rarely to the emotional, and much less the psychological. But to achieve or to fulfill ourselves as at our highest potential as men, we have to address all dimensions of our existence. And this is where mental health comes in, because it can influence other aspects of our lives and how we relate to the people around us. And I think this is much more critical than many people may admit. Again, we are all social beings. So what happens to us, if you're undergoing mental problems or mental issues, then that really and truly affects our relation to women, our relation to our friends, our relationship at work, and everybody within our social circle. So definitely for me, I agree that it's a critical issue, and I'm happy to be a part of the conversation tonight. I would just say that for now.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you so much for sharing your viewpoints on that. Just like I said before, this is quite a critical conversation to have, because and y'all have linked your comments and your inputs so well, because this is the reason why the Breadfruit Collective and the Glenn Family Foundation has brought us together for this moment, because it is essential for us to have this talk and to keep having the conversation. This is something that's not going to die down anytime soon, because just as was mentioned by Romario, right, about the focus on the physical health, it's been a long thing for a while. Eat better, sleep well, you know, take a vacation, get a mani-pedi, go for a massage. But a lot hasn't been done to help us to mitigate all that we've been feeling mentally and trying to cope with, trying being the operative word, cope with all this time where mental health is concerned. So with that being said, I'm going to ask the other question now. So how does mental health differ in the Caribbean compared with other countries, right? How does mental health differ in the Caribbean compared with other countries? I'm going to popcorn that over to Chris real quickly so he can start.
Hi, good night, everybody. Happy International Men's Day to everyone on call. So glad to be here. So in the Caribbean, I mean, Theo, you were describing it earlier in the meeting, actually. So there's a lot of stigma associated with mental health in the Caribbean. I mean, as much as any other country goes, but more so the Caribbean, because I mean, if you can't see it, what is there to treat, right? So usually that stigma, if you're feeling a type of way, oh, you got a jumbie on you or something like that, you know, go and pray about it, look to God. But honestly, really talking about all of these situations that we're going through, these hardships, I will say that that is the best way to progress in our mental health, you know, self-realization. I really, really think that that's the way to go. I agree with Bryan, Darren, and Romario earlier, everything that they said. I think it all ties in perfectly. So yeah, I really do think mental health in the Caribbean, it's, you know, we're getting more attention to it, we're getting more traction. And definitely, of course, men, the focus is on men now. So we have to step up and appreciate what we're doing to ourselves. So yeah, I think Tarik maybe wants to contribute on that point. Tarik, are you there?
There you go, Tarik. You have the mic.
Yeah, I'm here. Good night, everyone. To our moderator, to our speakers, on the panelists, and to our esteemed guests. Yes, indeed. I want to believe that when it comes to mental health in the Caribbean, it's a very touchy issue. Like all of my panelists before me, you know, they would have mentioned some great points on the issue at hand. In relation to the Caribbean, as opposed to other countries, indeed, there is a culture difference. And as a result, the way in which we handle the situation is somewhat different in relation to other international states, where there is a focus a little bit more on mental health. In the Caribbean, it's kind of like a new sector. And so what you would find is a little bit of difference in the way in which we approach this situation as Caribbean citizens, Caribbean citizens. So yeah, I do feel that there is quite a difference. But what I want to believe, it's you know, because of popular culture and because of what the ABC countries are producing and putting out, I feel as though the Caribbean can also meet at a level where they can learn and they can grow and develop as a Caribbean nation. So yeah, that would be my contribution in relation to that. So thanks a lot, Chris, for bringing me in on that.
All righty, thank you for that input, Tarik. Anyone else? Let me see. Anyone else want to jump in and contribute right here before we go ahead to the next topic?
Oh, and I just want to highlight what Gavin said in the chat here. Thank you so much for that comment about, you know, we need to move away from the notion of mental health as automatically negative, right? Yeah, just really awesome comment. And I don't have any editorialization. I think that's really important.
And well said. Definitely well said. Well said. Why is it important for us? Why we think on this Zoom right now? Why is it important for us to have a conversation specifically with men on mental health? Why is this discussion, essential? Not only today, thanks again to the Breadfruit Collective for bringing us together as a collective to have this discussion on mental health. But why is the conversation necessary? Why specifically focus on men's mental health? And I will help us to segue successfully into this aspect by saying, it was mentioned earlier, right, by one of our panelists, right? I want to say Chris touched on it, and so did Romario, about the need for this conversation to break down those stigmas, break down the everything that's been happening surrounding surrounding how men operate, how we go about our daily lives, and what what constitutes being a man, because that all of that goes into playing a good part in defining what mental health is and how we manage it and maneuver it and use it for our overall wellness and development as humans. So why is it important for us to have this conversation? Tarik, you have the mic.
Yes. So thank you a lot, Theo. Yeah. So as it relates to this question, I just want to touch on the point of being comfortable. I feel as men out there in the Caribbean, there isn't that level of comfort that we display amongst ourselves. And I guess it has a lot to do with the way in which the Caribbean is structured. I just want to zero in a little bit on our laws as it relates to the laws of Guyana in relation to Chapter 8:01. Subsection 96, which states that suicide is in fact a criminal act, and you can be sentenced to 2 years if ever found that you would have tried to commit the act. Now, people who would have been suffering from some form of mental health issue would have resorted to suicide or would have contemplated it. And so I feel by having this law in existence, we have a fear that is developed amongst the males in the Caribbean, that if they come out and they say, okay, well, I have tried to kill myself one too many times, that they may be penalized for such. And so to bring you back to the question, I feel as though it's important for us to have this conversation with our Caribbean males out there, because we need to develop that level of comfort. We need to bring them back to the understanding that at the ending of the day, this is where we're developing you as an individual. We need to get them to understand that even though you're dealing with all of these issues, that it's okay to feel this way, that it's okay to, to break down. It's okay to cry when you bleed. At the ending of the day, we're here to cope with you and feed you back all of these mechanisms and strategies in which you can go about dealing with the situation. So I feel it's important that that we touch on this discussion with males. I feel as though, we need to build them back. We need to regain their trust and their understanding on the issue. And by re-educating them, I think we'll be able to achieve this goal. Now, I don't know if my fellow panelists would also like to contribute to this as well. So that is my take.
All right, definitely. Let's take it away. Romario, you have any input on this right here?
All right, yeah, definitely. Just continuing from what he said. Of course, I think one of the main reasons is the high rates of suicide in men. I'm not sure who would have the direct statistics, and I would be happy if you can share that, even if it in the comments or from my other panelists. But we have to recognize that the rates of suicide among men is way higher than in women, and I think that is definitely that should be a matter of concern and a reason, one of the key reasons why we need to address mental health among men. And of course, secondly, in terms of like depression, of course that is also linked to suicide. And given the fact that the stats are so alarming, I think, at least for me personally, the last I checked, what I think was 3 times as women more likely to commit suicide by men. And if this is not alarming enough for the male population, then I don't know what is. And of course, again, we see this as an issue, as a problem. We see it very through a negative lens, to be quite honest, as Gavin was mentioning in the chat. And we need to shift our thinking from that towards more of seeking help, to see this as a condition that is not permanent and that should not deem you as somebody that have a severe disorder and there is no returning back for you. But that's not the case. It is an issue, and it can be addressed if we can seek help as any other health issue that we have as young men. So those two for me are the main reasons why we should be talking about mental health, and that's why it matters. Because if we do not, then we are going to continue to see the rise in these very, very disturbing stats that we see on an annual basis. And of course, Guyana, when it comes to suicide, we know that it also carries quite a high rate. So definitely that is one of the main driving reasons why I continue to have conversations on mental health within my circle. Thank you.
There you go. There you go. One of the things I do want to mention, while we are, focusing on the statistics that surrounds this topic, and just, the impact that it has on overall life, in general. I know growing up, we used to see it a lot. Growing up, so I grew up in Jamaica, like I mentioned before. Once I left, this is something I saw amplified as well, living here in the US, where a lot of the mass shootings and killing sprees and suicide rates, just like we just mentioned, of course, homicide rates, etc., etc. That's steeped in patriarchy for the most part, because a lot of these statistics point to the men among us that commit and carry out these acts, right? And that's just been a general case for me since I was a child. I can't recall the last time I heard about someone carrying out a mass shooting exercise, or activity, and it being a female mastermind. And it is now in like the past, give or take last decade, that we're starting to tie some of these violent actions and activities to a lack of mental health care practices, right? Where we're starting to have diagnoses in a lot of areas that where mental health is concerned. And one of the concerns I had, and I know that based on the conversations that we have had with the panelists before tonight's event, one of the concerns I had is that I didn't want mental health concerns, issues, problems, and everything to be tied to every single violent actions and criminal activity that we had, that we experience in a society, right? No matter where you live in the world. Because I see that, especially in recent years here where I live, right, in the US, like I mentioned, as soon as something happens, somebody acts. During the pandemic, people are acting out on flights. People are, there have been, as soon as lockdown restrictions and a lot of restrictions were lifted, all of a sudden there have been an uptick again in crime and criminal activity, because we're no longer sequestered in our different quarters of the world, right, in our homes and in our rooms. And what I didn't want happen, what I wouldn't like to see for the world, is to tie every criminal thing and every act of mass violence and just violence, a perpetuation of violence, to be tied to mental health issues and a lack thereof. Because I think that's an easy cop out, especially when you want to have things like when you want to commit acts of racism, acts of sexism, acts, like I said, steeping patriarchy. All of a sudden now you're doing those things, and you have a bad mental health day. I wanted that distinction to be made in research that I've seen, because I think it's essential. Because let's be honest with ourselves, people, and I'm going to pass the mic on to one of our other panelists. Some people are just plain crazy. And that's not crazy being attached to mental health illnesses. Some people are just really just like, just ready to, just to fight. And that's the reality. Not everything is a mental health issue. Some people just really have a hot temper or a short one, right? And in my opinion, these are my opinions as well. So I wanted to pass the mic to, let's see, Christine, you have any input on this topic right here real quickly before we move to the next one?
No, I'm learning as I go, and I appreciate all the points that you raised, and especially that clarification that you made about mental health and the need that, the conversation around it being something that we should be talking about, but also the negative connotation that's usually attached to it. I really appreciate that distinction that you made.
Great, great. Thank you. Ella Jam, I see your question in the comment section. We're archiving those, curating them, I should say, in order to present them in our question and answer section so that we can get through the topics that we have on hand. But we definitely see your questions and we're acknowledging them. Thank you so much for following our prompts earlier. Great, great. And I wanted to just point this out real quickly because our team did take the time out to do some research on this topic to make sure that we are speaking from, while we're expressing our individual opinions, we also have some factual bases from which to have this discussion. So men are significantly more at risk of attempting suicide than women. Now, in high income countries, 3 times as many men as women die by suicide, according to a World Health Organization, the WHO, trusted source. And that report was from 2018. We have to draw those lines of demarcation. That 2018 is very important. Why? You had 2019 thereafter, new data to come out, and then 2020. 2020 is gonna prove to be a benchmark for a lot of things going forward. So that's why that number, that a year, is essential, because we're gonna have a lot of comparisons and contrasts as to what happened and what has happened, especially with the pandemic that is still going on. So with that being said, now we're going to discuss this as well. Discuss this further. What is the connection between societal issues such as high suicide rates, domestic violence, alcoholism, and mental health? We're going to be discussing some more of that in our question and answer segment as well. Now, Tarik, what have been your experiences with mental health? How has your walk of life, brought you to this conversation tonight on International Men's Day?
Yeah, thank you for that, Theo. I can tell you with my personal experience, mental health has shocked me down. I have had some personal experiences in relation to depression, because I have been going through a trial in life as it relates to my educational circumstances. It has led me to the point of having suicidal thoughts. I've been depressed for quite some time. And, it's a situation that I can tell you, all you can think about in thought is just to pull yourself out of it, But I think what has held me together in this moment is my ability to use my talent and my love for poetry, which has allowed me to express. It's always better out than in. And I feel by expressing myself through words, through poetry, I was able to bring myself back to a stable point where I'm able now to understand how is it my mindset works. And I think by having feedback from others, I'm able to get a little bit of information as to how is it I can go about dealing with certain challenges as it relates to my mental health. And, a lot of people don't understand the importance of things like their talent. It's not just a distraction, it's a form of expression. And I feel through our talents, we can express what we feel and how we feel. And if we can't do it by words, if we have some other means of doing it, then, that could also be a coping mechanism to deal with the issues that follow on mental well-being and our capacity to function. So to answer your question, Theo, I've had my challenges with mental health, and these are just some of the ways in which I was able to cope with the situation.
There you go. I thank you so much for being vulnerable enough to share your story and to just speak out and speak your truth, right, and own your truth, because you've taken your artistic form and have been able to use it for the betterment of your mental health and for your life in general and persons around you, because we have persons benefiting from your art and your art form. So we can't thank you enough for that level of vulnerability, because it takes and this is what, and this is, we're now redefining the narratives, right? This is what real manhood looks like, to be able to be able to have the courage and the dedication to step up and be like, you know what, yeah, I've been struggling with some things throughout my life, and here's where I'm at right now. Here are my needs and my wants, and here's where I want to be in the future. And here are the resources I'm using to help, whether it be therapy and counseling, your respective craft, etc., etc. And how can I use this to help others along the way? So we definitely thank you for that vulnerability and for stepping up with that. Chris, you have your hand raised, and so you have the mic.
Hi, yeah. So, oh my God, I'm shaking. Yeah, I do relate quite a lot to what, whoa. Yeah, I do relate to a lot to what Thing just said. I'm also the second artistic opinion here, and I have used my art form to, help me just calm down, slow down, and understand my feelings. Look at me shaking. Look at this. Wow, I did not expect this to happen.
Okay.
But I
Okay.
I do remember one time, and I like that we're sharing experiences, because I've told one person this experience, and it has like helped him understand a couple of things that he's been going through. Look at Christine in the chat. So proud of you. Shut up. So yeah, my experience. My mom actually, we were having quite a heated argument, and I'm just bringing this up because not a lot of people have family that they could turn to. There's, as you said in the beginning, there's chosen families as well. So come through as a part of y'all, stop it. I'm being distracted. Yeah, so I remember my mom told me, I was explaining to her how I felt because, as we were taught, healthy coping mechanisms is to talk about your feelings and let the other party understand the point that where you're coming from, and move on from there. And I love her. I love my mom. Let me just get that straight. But she told me, "What the hell is wrong with you? Did you drink? It's like something took you over, something like that." And I remember feeling extremely um unheard. I just felt, wow, I really do not feel comfortable in the situation right here. And I took that, I took that statement. I just went into my room for the rest of the night, and I started painting this self-portrait. And it, like, at first it was just me getting something done out of necessity, but I spent the entire night on that self-portrait, and it continued to the next day until lunch, straight working, 2 cups of coffee, and it helped me resolve quite a lot of things that I was going through. It helped me realize, like, all right, this lady could say things, but she is not, the one who is, I'm getting distracted. But yeah, it helped me realize quite a lot of things about myself and, my situation and what I need to distance myself from, and, how to better handle my mental health.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I do relate with Tarik on that one. It hit home. Yeah.
Right. Most definitely. And again, thank you for your vulnerability and just for speaking up. We can't acknowledge that enough. We're speaking from a place of gratitude, because we know it takes a lot of courage to be able to be on this, Zoom and express yourselves to persons who you may or may not know, right? So we thank you for that, level of vulnerability. We can't appreciate that enough. Anyone else that wants to lend their commentary on this particular topic, you have the mic, Bryan. Go ahead. Thanks for raising your hand in person and not using the digital version. I like that.
I'm a bit of a grandpa, so I actually don't know how to do that on my iPhone. So, but thank you, both Chris and Tarik, for sharing your experiences. Going back maybe 5 to 7 minutes at the beginning of our conversation. So what was brought up was the difference between just over in the Caribbean and Western mental health, and how here, because of pop culture, it's less of a taboo these days, which we're lucky. We still have a lot of work to do, but it has gotten better in recent years. And I was thinking, so by trade, I'm actually a musician. All through middle school, high school, college, I played music and I was in bands. I've written music, albums, and I've toured and all that. And my takeaway was that there's so many different artists who you can relate to. Like I don't always speak about my emotions and feelings. And again, I was born here, so I'm speaking from a Western point of view, just to share that with you all. But I remember listening to different bands and just crying, honestly, because I was like, yes, somebody is saying exactly what I cannot say because I'm a male, because of my family unit, and even just being a brown male, a black male, that's so important. We have these tropes on how I'm supposed to dress, how I'm supposed to talk, how I'm supposed to act in a certain way. But through music, through these Western bands and artists, I was able to find at least some sort of liberation. And then through that, I was able to express that when I joined bands and played for different artists later on. And Chris, you sharing your story with the painting. I don't paint, I'm terrible. But as a drummer, sometimes my bandmates and I used to turn off the lights, set some candles, and we would just play because we had a long day. We didn't want to talk, but you express it and you just have to get it out. And then we would cry and hug each other. And it was beautiful. So it reminded me of that. So thank you so much for sharing. It means a lot, and I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Bryan. I absolutely love the synergy of how the arts have helped persons to, just bring together their own methods of handling their mental health struggles and, what they're going through. I absolutely love it. The synergy is very real right now. And it is, we were brought together in this moment by the universe on so many different levels. And I thank you for that. Just that level of catharsis that we're able to experience because of our hobbies or passion or, or craft, what puts food on the table for some of us, right? So we definitely thank you for those methods and those ways, because one of the things you said, Bryan, real quickly, and I'm going to hand the mic over to you, Romario. I see you patiently waiting. One of the things I wanted to say as well is that, remember earlier I said in the conversation, I wanted to have lines of demarcation where not associating every criminal activity, especially violent criminal activity, with mental health, because that's a stigma in and of itself, right? That we have to dismantle or encourage to dismantle. One of the things I wanted to see done better, Bryan, throughout history is that people have been speaking about mental health for years. The DSM-IV, which is one of the governing Bibles of mental healthcare work in psychology and psychiatry, they had to rewrite and revise a lot of their editions to stop to declassifying mental health, and things like homosexuality and things like that as, this bad thing, right? One of the things I wanted to see happen for us throughout the years as well, because folks have been speaking about mental health for so long, and it's like it's bothersome to me ever so slightly that we had to rely on celebrities and celebrity culture to pinpoint this specific need and to highlight it, because it's been spoke of. People have been speaking about this for years. This is nothing new, right? But as soon as somebody tweets about this, hey, get free talk therapy here, essential. I'm not fighting that, essential, but it's just like, why do we have to wait for somebody in the spotlight to not only have their own mental health struggles put on display for us? Hello, Britney Spears, free Britney. But to also highlight it, because we've been speaking about this for years. Now, all of a sudden, especially where we live, and I hear legislation and laws and everything being thrown around on the conversation and in the chat. Now we're introducing these things. Oh, now we want mothers to have paid time off and paid family leave. I'm just like, mothers have been essential for years. Like, we're just now getting to this in 2021. Like, when have mothers not been essential? You know what I'm saying? Because these things contribute to mental health. But that's just my thing. I just wanted us to be able to recognize our collective power in this vulnerability that we're displaying, and use it for the betterment of ourselves first. Make sure our glass is at least half full, quarter full, all the way full, before we start pouring into others, because we've been having these discussions now for years, and we're getting to a place where it's becoming a bit more equitable for all. Romario, you have the mic.
All right. So I'm really loving the experiences and the stories on mental health. And I think it's the most interesting part for me in the conversation because it's a common issue than we think. And I think that's being highlighted here. So I just want to quickly also share my experience. And similar to the first part, I think it's Tarik with education and the financial constraints. I know, especially for me, relocating, for example, on the coast of Guyana, that was a whole different experience in its entirety. More so being a minority in Guyana as an indigenous person. I'm here. I am going to university, and I don't have that close support like family, where all of my family is back in a different location. And there have been points in my life where I really needed to be understood in some of the challenges I was having as a young student, as well as being an indigenous person in a really different society. So what I want to really highlight is that sometimes we have to recognize that our vulnerability could be the reason why we are still here today, and that we were able to overcome our experience with mental health, because there have been some points in my life where I actually just cried, you know. And this morning I was looking at TikTok, and there was a guy that was asking some a group of young men, it's like, have you cried before? I was like, no, no, and this and that. And some say, yeah, maybe like 10 years ago, 13 years ago. But I think I've reached a point in my life as a young man that if there is a need to just let out and express yourself, if nobody ain't gotta be watching, but if it helps, I think that has helped me to be where I am today. Because at that point in my life, I could not resort to alcohol or drugs. I was not into that life. So there was no way I saw that as a coping mechanism. And I'm really happy about that as well, because perhaps it may have taken a different route. But there are going to be points in your life where you would have to accept the fact that you're as vulnerable as anybody else, and if you need to let that out, then that's what you need to do. But of course, I found strength in that, because if I can accept this about myself, and this is a natural part of me dealing with my emotion, dealing with my situation, and from that take a step forward, just basically reconfigure myself and to take another step to empower myself to take another challenge. I think that has really been helpful, and that's really what I want to share. That firstly, being vulnerable at some points in your life, that is okay as a man, and you may not always find the support. All right, you may not always find the support, and even when you need it the most, it may not be there. And find the strength in yourself in whichever way you can to do that. All right, so that's my experience.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that. These are parts of the conversation that's just enriching this dialogue left, right, and center. Thank you. Thank you, Romario. Next up, now, how do we take care of our mental health? I think this is an ideal segue from describing our experiences with, mental health struggles, etc., etc. How are we taking care of our mental health? And I think, what are some of our coping mechanisms, right? And I think that we already started this ball rolling. Bryan touched on it, so did Tarik, so did Chris, and so did, Romario as well. How can we round out this aspect of the discussion now in terms of taking care of our mental health? If it's even to reiterate for some folks who just joined our Zoom and didn't hear what was said earlier, how are we handling and taking care of our mental health?
Let me just go ahead.
Yeah.
So I think for me now, again, it's always about learning from what works and what does not. You have to know yourself as a person, be able to search yourself. And for me, from where I was maybe like 5 years ago, I think what works for me is music, exercise, meditation, because sometimes you need a combination. Maybe three coping mechanisms work for you. Sometimes one just works, one doesn't. But I think it's really healthy to have quite a range of mechanisms that can be able to really help you in a situation where you need to release yourself and relax and just express your inner self, all right, which is really good for your mental well-being.
Yes.
So today, often, like when I have a stressful week, or I have some issues in my life, definitely I look forward to maybe taking a break and take a trip or a weekend, maybe go on a weekend, get away to some resort or do some swimming to some creek along the highway in Guyana, which we have a number of them to do. And then the other most important part for me is to have someone that you can talk to. You got to get somebody that you can talk to, that you can relate to. It's super important. And I am happy that I have such a person in my life, and we can talk about anything. And mental health is one of the key areas that we agree that this is something that we are so lucky to have, like this friendship, that we can be open about it. We can be open about it, and just being able to talk about certain things in your life, it's already a great step towards seeking help when it comes to mental health. You need to have some, well, at least for me, I see that the importance of having somebody in your life that you can open up to. So yeah, hand it over to somebody else.
Absolutely. Thank you, Romario. Right along, I think I saw Darren with his hand up earlier. Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm just gonna piggyback on what Romario said about having someone in your life, and just kind of deepen that a little bit, because we're kind of told a certain story about what that is supposed to look like. Older generations really impressed upon us this understanding that your significant other, your romantic partner, is supposed to be your end all be all. It's supposed to be the one person that you can rely on to be your best friend, your therapist, your that's the one person that you're supposed to be like going to for each and every one of your emotional needs. And that is a lot to put on one person. And that's a lot to lose if you lose that person through, whatever way we lose our significant others, when it unfortunately does happen. And so what's really been helpful for me personally is living in a community where the person that I depend on for most of my day-to-day emotional needs and for sparking joy is actually my best friend. And we depend on each other in ways that sometimes you traditionally think of having a significant other depend on you for. And then, of course, you don't have it all be on that one person, even still. You still have a community, when I'm looking for somebody to kind of like distract me for something and spark joy as a way to get through a tough time, I go to somebody else for that. If I'm looking for somebody to just vent to, I go to somebody else for that. You really need to have a different model of how we're depending on people. So I think, Romario, you brought up the first step is that you have to have someone that you can depend on. And the thing that I would follow up with is that in our generation and younger generations, we need to really break that understanding, that lie that we were told by folks older than us, that your significant other is supposed to be that one person that you depend on, because that's not just unwise, it's dangerous. It's a hard thing to explain to older people, right? Because they kind of have this in their head that oh yeah, you're husband and wife, it's us against the world, or but that's absolutely dangerous and unwise. And I think we need to understand that for ourselves and live that and create new models for how we have support in our communities, right? And the last thing I'll say about that, to kind of land the plane, is that I have to teach this to other Caribbean people who are not used to me showing up in their lives in the ways that I'm ready to show up. When I'm prepared to be a friend, I'm prepared to give 110%. I mean, those of you who unfortunately are my friends know this about me, that I give 110% to my friendships, and a lot of folks don't really are not used to that. They're not used to me really being so consistent and so dogged about supporting people and celebrating the moments of joy that happen in their lives in ways that kind of transgress their previous conceptions of what a friend is. So my advice here is just to give 110% to your friendships and expect 110% from your friendships, because you can't put it all on that significant other.
Absolutely. And, thank you so much for pointing that out because, Bryan, I'm going to hand it over to you real quickly. Thank you for pointing that out, Darren, in terms of, having that support system and that circle of friendship. That is good. That is essential. And I like what you said because it ties into something I said earlier about, countries now recognizing the need for an extension of paid time off and leave for mothers when they have children and fathers as paternity leave, right? Having, even though you have that partner next to you and everything like that, and you have certain friends in your circle, always be encouraged to remember not everybody is equipped to handle what we're encountering and experiencing mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually, whatever, right? Not everyone is prepared for that. You're encouraged to find that person, whether it be a licensed professional counselor / therapist / psychiatrist, especially if you have the means to do so, because we know money plays a factor into this, right? And finances. You have to make sure that the person that you're engaging with to help you through these times, they're actually able to help you do so, because you're not encouraged to go to someone who you know for a fact that when you come to them with your issues and your struggles, it leads to a round of drinking. That leads to other debilitating areas and impacts in life, right? Again, I love to provide caveats to my statements. I'm in no way, shape, or form throwing drinking under the bus. Nobody said anything about that. I am just saying, in this capacity of mental health awareness, we have to be able to find the persons that are best equipped to help us in our struggles, so that we're not, having this kind of what is known in the field as trauma bonding. So because I have an issue, Darren, and I'm just using it as an example. Darren has an issue. We now have a bond because we share the same traumatic experiences. And now, instead of finding help outside of our bond, we're just bonding together in unhealthiness, which leads to other unhealthy behavior, right? So that, that's an essential point. I see Gavin saying correct. And we also need to be real and know what we can handle and when to seek help for that person, right? Referrals to other professional services. Yes. Thank you. Oh, Christine did say, that she agrees with Darren, and that they haven't yet met the person, but he has been so helpful and supportive with her goals, and of course we're grateful for Darren's friendship. So thank you. I just wanted to highlight that real quickly because friendship is important. Bryan, you have the mic, my good man.
Thank you. I'll be brief. Sometimes it feels like Darren and I are twins. Exactly what he said, I have experienced, and unfortunately I was on, I guess, the worst end of it, where when I finally was reaching adulthood and I understand all of these traumas, and I found somebody that just made it all better. I just regurgitated all of my trauma, and it was just messy, but I didn't understand. I did not know. And then with copious amounts of drinking, I made that person my savior, which is a very dangerous place to be. I mean, and they left and I went to rock bottom. And so that is speaking from experience. Now that I have a community, even with my church friends and my musician friends, where we have healthy discussions and we hold each other accountable. That's also something that's really important in friendships, is holding each other accountable. Sometimes my friend needs to give me a slap in the face or just yell at me like, hey, I love you. What you're doing is wrong. I'm coming from a place of, it's not correct. It is correction, but it's not abuse. And I think that needs to be made clear. Also, second point, I saw somebody make a comment about medication and mental health. So when I was diagnosed, I was given the choice of medication. And personally, I wanted to see if I could do it holistic, simply because I know, not firsthand, but through other people that do take medication for mental illness, for depression, anxiety, what have you, there is an effect that takes place. So you're trading one thing for another. So it might help you in this area, but then it cripbles you in another area. Now, I'm not saying that would have necessarily happened to me. Just from my own decision, I wanted to do things holistically, and by the grace of God, it has been working out. So I just wanted to touch on that because I think that's very important. I'm no way, shape, or form against medication, but I think you need to do your own research and really weigh the pros and the cons, and then make a decision that is best for you ultimately. And that's all I wanted to share.
And B, can I just cut across and talk just like we're just for the sake of time do it quickly, but
Of course.
talk a little bit more about holding each other accountable, because we have a lot of folks especially in Caribbean communities. I don't know about Caribbean men holding each other accountable. It just doesn't happen. So can you just talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah. So there is, like Theo said, there is trauma bonding, which I've done with friendships and in romantic relationships. And it felt good. It's like we're gonna help each other out, or I'm gonna do the same drugs that you're doing because I care about you and I'm going to help you. You can't help yourself. You can't say you are not God. We're all human. We cannot save anybody else. So doing the same thing to help somebody else while your intentions are pure, in a sense, your body is not. So, you can't, that's why finding friends that are a little bit different or in a different place and can hold you accountable and really hold your hand through certain things. But again, they're not your parent and they're not your savior. So important. Again, I was born here. Western, but I feel like in the Caribbean, nobody wants to talk about anything, especially observing the older generations, just observing my even close family, my close family group. I like to study them and psychoanalyze them, write it down in a notebook, and just put that as a juxtaposition to my own life and to other people that I meet. Nobody holds anybody accountable. We kind of just laugh and we sweep everything under the rug. Fortunately, we're in a Western society now, at least in New York and the USA, where that's a little bit different. But we're turning the tide, I feel like, as a younger generation, and we really need to be more vocal in the Caribbean communities. Although we might be bastardized for it, because we're completely flipping the script now, and a lot of times people fear what they don't know and they fear change. And that's just something we're going to have to encounter and go against the grain for. But it's so important to make sure that's known and to be vocal about that for the sake of our children and our children's children. So that's it.
Thank you. Thank you for that. For those follow-up questions as well, Bryan and Darren. Very enriching for the conversation. Very much so. Tarik, you have the mic, my good man.
Thank you. I just wanted to add to the whole trauma bonding. I want to also say that it's also important, and I liked what he just mentioned as it relates to the type of person in which you cling to in situations like this. Because I feel as though sometimes the persons, they're not also equipped to handle the situation that you throw at them or that you bring at them. And so what happens is they end up becoming overworked, and eventually you have an issue where they're backing out. And sometimes you create a bond to the extent that you feel as though this person is your person, the individual that, hey, if I'm feeling down, if I'm having this traumatic experience, I can run to. So when that person is now not present, it also adds to your state rather than relieve you from it. And so I want to just add, for those who are listening, that it's very important that with the persons that you open up to on these situations, they need to be different. They don't just need to be the individuals that can sit and listen to you and give advice, but they must also be at a different stage where they can literally take you and, mold you and put you in a situation where you can develop and for the better. So, yeah.
Right. Thank you, Tarik, for that input. Thank you. Can't thank you enough. We want to ask the other question as well. Now, with regards to, in your circle, is mental health a topic that's discussed, right? And I want to make sure I pose this question very specifically to, some of our panelists right here, right now. And, for this one, I want to be able to, I'm going to come back to it once we're done with our question and answer section for the panelists, because I want to be able to ask some of our viewers or participants on the call tonight, if that's a thing for them, you know, is in your circle, in your circle of friends, right? Is your mental health a topic that is discussed? And I want us to think about it in this viewpoint as well. The saying goes like that is that if you are in an environment where you're thriving and prospering and succeeding, and you have a set of people around you call friends, that's a friendship circle. If no growth, no happiness, no joy, no mental health, wellness, and health is being promoted, that's a cage. That's not a circle. So I want us to think about it from that aspect. Do we have people in our circle that can help us? And the panelists touched on this very, very nicely. Not even briefly, they touched on it very nicely. You know, Darren was able to ping pong over to Bryan and Bryan back to Darren, right? And the other speakers as well, like Tarik, like Chris, were able to say, you know, things about how they find support within their network, right? So within your friendship circle, is there that type of support? And we can, trust me, this is literally a yes or no answer. I don't like to have the label just put on it, stamped on it, like you can only answer yes or no, but it's one way or the other. Do you have that kind of support in your circle? Simply put. Tarik, I see you laughing. You want to grab that question before we bounce it to someone else?
I like how you put it, that just straightly get to the point, right? I would say for me, when it comes to my male circle, no. But when it comes to my female circle, I think there is that support. Right. So very brief and right to the point.
There you go. Thank you. Ping ponging it over. Christine, I did see you contribute something to the chat. Thank you for that. Thank you. Do you have that kind of support?
I make it an effort in my friendship. Like, this is the thing we're going to discuss, because I can't go a day without thinking about my mental health. So it's something like, if I have a criteria for a friend, you have to be able to, like, let's be open and vulnerable with each other. So I would like to say yes.
Okay. There you go. And I like your contribution, Christine, because not to be stereotypical or sidelining with my next comment, but you know, that's traditionally a woman thing, right? If we can be honest with ourselves, that's traditionally a woman thing. No matter how you identify as a woman is a woman. Where, you know, y'all were conditioned and raised to tap into that feminine, tap into that female energy. Oh yeah, girls can always talk about this and get together and kiki and have a nice drink, and we can chit chat and everything. And the men weren't conditioned and raised to do that, which is why we're having this conversation on International Men's Day. So, you know, that's definitely something that, as Bryan touched on, where this concept of a younger generation, because we are relying so heavily on the generations to come after us. We can only hope to equip the generations that are coming, that we are calling younger generation, to come break down systems and such in the world, right? We can only hope that we equip them to actually do so and not just put this burden on them. But where the other generations are concerned, we're seeing this change in narratives, even with using, you know, gender pronouns and things of that nature, where we get to really identify ourselves. You know, that's essential for us to have those conversations, for us to talk about it, no matter your gender or your gender identity or your gender marker or your sexual orientation or whatever the case may be. It's a conversation. One of the first gifts that we were blessed with as we were pushed out into this world and we were being raised, is the ability to speak and to start communicating, first as baby babble and now as conversations constructively, like we're having right now, right? So it doesn't matter what walk of life you're coming from or how you identify, we should all be able to have that conversation with our friendship circle. I want one more panelist to speak on this, Romario or Chris. We have any thoughts on, you know, having that friendship circle or a friend, period? It doesn't have to be a circle, right? Or a friend that can help us out with our mental health.
Yeah, I definitely have that. More within my female circle, not differently from Tarik, but I can safely say at least one or two in my male circle. But in addition to that, I just want to also say that in terms of changing the narrative of this entire in our approach to mental health within our own circles, I also ask myself whether I can be that person. All right. And I think this is also important. It's not just about seeing if you have friends in that manner, but can you also be that person for somebody? And that person may not may not be a friend. It can be somebody that you meet at a workplace, in your different social settings. Can you also be that person? And because sometimes there are people that are also looking for that sort of help, I would say. So I try to be that. I try to be that, and I always tell my friends, for example, that if there is any reason that you feel that you need to talk about something, or just whatever it is, know that without any judgments, I'm always there to have an open conversation, because I believe that it is something that so many people need, but they don't always have it.
Excellent, excellent, excellent points, Romario. Excellent points, which is why we're having this conversation right now on International Men's Day. This conversation brought to you, of course, being hosted by the Breadfruit Collective as well as the Glenn Family Foundation. And next up on our list, we just want to ask, do you think, what advice do you have for government ministers / offices to invest in mental health resources for young people and especially young men, right? And I'm going to ping pong this / popcorn it over to Darren. So just to reiterate the question, so our other panelists are aware of what we're discussing, and our audience, what advice do you have for government ministers / offices to invest in mental health resources for young people and especially young men? Right. And again, I'm gonna real quickly before Darren starts, where Bryan mentioned it, because Bryan is younger than me. I can speak on myself, right? Where we wanna be able to say, oh yeah, the next generation got us, and this is gonna be the generation to dismantle systems and kick down doors and everything, making sure that mine and the generation that came before us, which left us with so many things wrong, we want to make sure that we equip the young men that are coming after us to actually tear down and dismantle what is no longer working or functioning for our societies, right? So Darren, you can take it away. You have the mic.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would also encourage folks, like, if you have ideas about like what responsibility the government has towards, or our respective governments have towards supporting the mental health of young men in particular, please chime down below in the chat. We really love to hear from you. And this is a collective conversation. We're trying to create a new norms in the Caribbean. And so I can't do that by myself. So please add your thoughts in the chat. But I've thought about this a lot. And what really like sparked this for me is actually, very strangely enough, President Biden's infrastructure bill, where there's a bill that has been going through Congress and being debated on about human infrastructure. And I've heard the term human infrastructure thrown about here and there throughout my life, but never as much as like the past year. And I think the pandemic really showed us that for the proper functioning of society and for our economy, and the national security of the nation, we need to invest in people, right? We need to invest in our care economy. We need to make jobs that center care for other human beings and the maintenance of other human beings. We need to make those jobs profitable for folks. We need to make those jobs attractive, because it's not just a luxury to have social workers out here. It's not a luxury to have home health aides out here. This is necessary for the proper functioning of society. And I think we need to start considering the mental health of everybody an important part of the proper functioning of society and our economies. So the human infrastructure bill actually does touch on mental health resources, but I think in this conversation, we can imagine something even bolder for the Caribbean, right? We can imagine a future in which our governments can see that read the suicide crisis in the United States, in Guyana, in Trinidad and Tobago, and what other Caribbean countries in the upper quintile of, in Suriname. Ooh, Suriname. Gosh, I didn't even know Suriname had such a high suicide rate. If our governments see this as a crisis, not just for each individual person that attempts suicide and that succeeds at suicide, but a crisis for their economy and the future of their society, we can understand that it's worth the investment to create sites in which folks can find accessible mental health care, right? This is an investment that needs to happen. So as much as I find it interesting, I'll put it this way, that Guyana is marshaling so many resources towards preparing for ExxonMobil to come into the country and do what they have to do. We're not going to talk about that today. I think that maybe they could keep the same energy when it comes to investing in resources to help mitigate the suicide crisis in Guyana, and make those jobs profitable, to make the training for people who are interested in those careers low cost or no cost, to create professional networks for folks starting off in that career so that they can get the kind of support so that they can be successful and be innovative in those careers to provide mental health care services that are culturally congruent. So I would love to see our governments invest in these kinds of resources and make them publicly accessible. And much in the same way that President Biden is actually spending billions of dollars in human infrastructure in the United States. I think that that should just be the beginning of these conversations about human infrastructure, because we're losing our resources. We're losing our most valuable resources, and that is young people. Our most valuable resources are young people, and we don't want to wait until they get to the point of, thinking about attempting self-harm to do something. As a nation, we want to invest in infrastructure to prevent these things from happening. And the government has so much power at their disposal to do something. We have to demand better from our government institutions. And thank you so much for actually continuing this conversation in the chat as well, Gavin. Make the services accessible to the public sector at all levels of, yeah, exactly. Invest to get more professionals, and really make sure that we have a pipeline. We have a very robust pipeline for getting young people who are capable into these professions early on, because there's no shortage of need for mental health professionals in the Caribbean. So we need to make sure that our governments are investing in that pipeline so that the system is not overburdened, as you say, Gavin. Oh, and I see that Lucien Gopard is on this call, who also works in public health care. I just wanted to say, Lucien, if you're here at all, you can also just chime in the chat, just because Lucien works in public health care in Suriname. So if you have anything to add, please put it in the chat.
Yes. Thank you, Darren, for that. I appreciate it. We do. I also just want to mention something from Christine in the chat. Hashtag human infrastructure. It equals investing in the care economy, right? Thank you for that input, Christine, because I also wanted to touch on something. This might seem like a strange concept to folks across the world who are not based in the US, but we have something going on right now that's called the Great Resignation, where a lot of folks across the country who once desperately, or not so desperately, clung to their jobs, their day-to-day, that puts bread on their table and food on their table, actually just leaving in droves. It's something that's been happening since the vaccines rolled out this year and a little bit prior to that, owing to the pandemic as one of the main reasons being cited as the cause for this resignation, right? Darren's statements on human infrastructure and human capital cannot be stressed enough. So, so has Christine's input as well as Gavin's in the chat, that, we need this investment in that type of infrastructure, because we keep forgetting, with all the advancements in technology and machination and modernization and, things that deal with having technology take care of a lot of things that we once found so day-to-day and routine. It's just that we forget that the human capitals need to be taken care of. I live with family members that, and I know family members, and I'm associated with friends that they didn't get no time off during the pandemic unless they requested it, because they were so-called deemed frontline workers. But all of a sudden, our frontline workers the pay wasn't matching up, right? So we need that investment, because folks are now leaving like, listen, maybe I don't need this job. Maybe I can go start my own enterprise now, do my own thing for a while, tap into some resources, go live my best life and live out my wildest dreams. Because if you're not, and this is one of the reasons why we're having this conversation, if my boss, my pastor, my this, my that, the person that I associate with as a person of influence, if y'all aren't taking me seriously and taking my mental health seriously and my wellness seriously, it's time for me to put me first. Because I'm thankful that, you know, all 21, two of us on this Zoom right now, we're survivors of a pandemic. Let's give ourselves a round of applause for that. We are survivors of a pandemic. And this ought to now highlight, you know, the need for taking care of ourselves first and foremost, right? Those paid time off that you have accrued, those hours that you can have, you know, paid vacation depending on where in the world you live. It's time to look into using those mental health benefits through your job, or just independently altogether. It's time to explore using those resources, because we're our own best advocates, right? That's why we're having this dialogue, so we can know what our individual needs and individual and unique needs are, so that we can best meet somewhere in the middle and get those addressed by the proper means. Chris, popcorn it over to you. You can grab the mic.
Hi, yeah, just to add real quickly to what you guys all said, which are all extremely valid. I mean, I'm the youngest here, so I'm just, putting in my point where I can. These are very active approaches, towards solving mental health, in workplaces, therapy, professional help, of course. But I feel we also need to talk about some, more passive approaches, like more approaches that could help as an outlet, as a preventative measure, I guess. So things like, I mean, we mentioned all of them at the beginning of the conversation, meditation, exercise, so many things, like you just providing spaces, the government to provide spaces, I feel it's so helpful. And if it's free, we have to talk about this. If it's free, more people would be more inclined to, partake in it, find something that they actually enjoy, and go on from there and, feeling better. So yeah.
Most definitely. Thank you for that input. That's a very valid point to make, and we appreciate, trust me, we appreciate your viewpoint very much as a panelist on this discussion tonight. I wanted to point out something real quickly from Gavin in the chat. Make the services that in conjunction with tagging along with what Darren said, and of course, supported by Chris's input, make the services accessible in the public sector at all levels of care. Invest to get more professionals. The reality is that the system is overburdened, in terms of those client to professional ratios and those relationships, right? And we see that happening. We for each population across the earth, at least a certain portion of our population did die owing to this pandemic. So it's just like, what are we now tasked to do with the ones that are still living and breathing, and how are we going to manage that capital moving forward? Very good commentary, Gavin. Darren did point out, I just wanted to just run this by y'all real quickly in case you didn't see it. The rum shops in the Caribbean and wherever you live, and our prisons can't be the first and second sources of mental health care in the Caribbean. And to touch on something real quickly without dwelling here too long, Darren mentioned prisons. We now know that prisons, and some of us have known this for a while, that prisons really serve no rehabilitative purposes. So just for Darren to even put that in the chat right now, that's very, it holds so much weight, because we're discussing mental health, and we know for a fact, especially where we live in this country, it's 50 different states, 50 different rules and regulations, where things might apply to one penal system in New York is going to be very different from Alabama, so on and so forth. So it's just like, to even mention mental health and the prison system, prison pipeline system, that whole infrastructure, that whole institution, that we know that's a whole different Zoom to have. That's another Zoom to have. Hopefully not in a year's, not too long a year's time away from now, right? But yeah, we know that certain institutions clearly have no rehabilitative purposes nor promises for the human capital, especially where men are concerned. And definitely, like we discussed earlier in this call, just delving into the abuse of substances, which includes overindulgence in alcohol. It will never offer the level of catharsis, of healing that we're looking for, for our mental health and healthiness. So thank you so much. And again, thank you so much for that, Chris. I want to just move right along right now. Now, Just two other questions, and I'm gonna leave that one for the last one actually because I really like it. But what advice do you have for men as it relates to managing / speaking out on their mental health and wellness? What's your general advice from just so-called regular people? We know we're extraordinary in our own rights, but what's your advice as people on this Zoom right now to give to, you know, just men in general handling their mental health care and wellness? And I always like to tie the conversation into this great big bundle of resources and help, because you know the conversation isn't disjointed where what we said at the beginning or in the middle doesn't apply towards the end, right? We have been speaking about this question all night long, all evening long, right? What advice can we give men on taking care of their mental health and handling their mental health and living their best life from this conversation point forward? Anyone that want to grab the mic from me? Go ahead.
Yeah, so I'll say, first of all, I really appreciate the conversation that we've had so far. This evening has really like proven to me that we've only just scratched the surface of really discussing men's mental health, and I can't thank the Breadfruit Collective enough for providing us this opportunity. So as we kind of like wind down and think about like what we've discussed here tonight, what's been made clear to me is that there needs to be more spaces like this where we have transnational Caribbean focused conversations focused on mental health. But yeah, like I'm thinking about the coping mechanisms of folks in my family, the men in my family, who particularly the ones that live in the Caribbean. And you know, I think the arts are a great way to just relieve stress. Whether it's singing, creating something. I even put construction as part of the arts. I think that's a very culturally congruent way for like men to kind of like work out whatever they got going on without harming other people. You know, I don't think it's necessarily an accident that like a lot of working class men in the Caribbean are in construction fields, partially because we're developing nations and we need a lot of construction. But besides that practical point, I think that there's something about like creating something and putting something together and welding and sawing that actually like work something out, you know. And I think we need to encourage those tools, not just as like a way to earn an income, but actually a way to like work out like what you have going on in ways that are comfortable for Caribbean people. Given and Caribbean men, given the way our economies are set up and the way that we treat mental health. Yeah, and I think storytelling is a very powerful tool that we have, you know, recounting things for ourselves. You know, Caribbean people love to tell stories. You know, so I think it's another way that we can kind of like work out what's going on with us, is just to tell and retell and have an audience that's supportive and willing to listen in a constructive way. So for the sake of time, I'll just end there and give it to Chris.
Yes, thank you. There you go, Chris. Thank you, Darren.
Yeah, thank you, Darren. I'll just share what actually really worked for me. I mean, I'm not telling anyone to go paint a masterpiece or anything like that, but what really worked for me is self-introspection. So just take a step back. If you think you're acting a way that's, you know, not acceptable, please just take a step back, analyze the situation, and you know, just realize it. Realizing it is the first part into actually solving it, and then you could move on from there. And you don't have to do what I did and take the entire night and paint something. You could exercise, you could clean. I personally love cleaning. I could clean my bathroom forever. Exercise, clean, do anything that would just give you the time to just look at yourself and think about your actions and how it's affecting others or how it's affecting you. So yeah, that's like my top advice.
Thank you, Chris, for that. We appreciate it. Tarik, you have any commentary on this? What advice are you giving to the men that's listening to your voice of reason tonight?
Yeah, I do. Thank you for that. I want them to understand, and for the people that are listening, that it's important to first learn about yourself and to know what works for you. I can speak in relation to myself. What I found is that, and I love that Chris brought up exercising. That has really helped. It allows you to clear your mind and channel your thoughts so that you're able to, think more clearer. Meditation and these other exercising principles that you could put into effect can, strengthen your thoughts so that you'd be able to, figure out for yourself what is it I can add that can make me strengthen my mental capacity as it relates to mental health. I want to
Mhm.
also add, I'm really advocating for the use of the arts. I think, everyone out there has a talent or enjoys something that they love doing. I think by indulging in that act, you'd also be able to bring out other sides of you which you never knew existed. And maybe you
Mhm.
can explore that side and you'd be able to learn so much more about yourself. So, self introspection, you need to understand yourself, you need to learn what works for you. You can take advantage of the things that you enjoy doing, and you from there you work along to bettering yourself in
Mhm.
that area.
Thank you, Tarik. Thank you, Tarik. Romario, can we get a word or two from you about this, please?
Yeah, definitely. And I just want to reiterate what you said, actually, Theo, that with regards to looking after yourself, I think
Mm-hmm.
you need to emphasize it more. Sometimes as a man, we have the responsibility to be in control of so many things that we are invested in care of many people around us, and forget our in that process forsake our own well-being. All right, but we have
Mm-hmm.
to recognize that even we ourselves need to be our own priority sometimes. And for me, I have taken an intentional commitment to do that more, where I have to look after myself,
Mm-hmm.
where I only have a healthy mental, physical, emotional, spiritual well-being. Only then can I be able to really offer my true self or my stronger self to the people that need me. So I would say that look after yourself. You're going to be your own. You're your first savior or the first step. And secondly, what I also want to add to the conversation is that if you need to take a break, then take it. All right. Sometimes I believe we delay when we know to ourselves that we are in desperate need of just removing ourselves from a situation, or from this intense experience that we are having, and just get away and somewhere and just relax and ease your mind, if it was your friends, if it was your family, if it's a holiday. But if you know to yourselves that this is what you really need, then please go ahead and do it. I think that is my take on it. And being an environmentalist, for example, connecting back with nature, I think that works so much for me. People this may not be a common or a popular therapy for people, but definitely for me it works. Nature is powerful in healing you, and it is one of the reasons why I sort of gravitate towards nature-based activities, because it helps with my mental well-being. And the issue that we've had with this pandemic as a whole is that it has really isolated me or kept me from that therapy that it has normally offered me. All right, and I think that has actually been one of the reasons why it has been quite impactful and for a lot of people. But apart from that, I believe that we should try to explore ourselves more, get out there, maybe even keeping yourself occupied into volunteering activities. It really helps for me. All right. So as another panelist was saying, explore yourself, understand yourself, see what works, and eventually, I think you can find some form of mechanism that may be able to work for you. The arts definitely work for me, and again, I'm going to emphasize that not one mechanism may always work. It's always gonna differ. So do explore yourself. But lastly, finally, I think Christine would agree with me is that the environment and where you can go to relax with some friends, it's powerful.
Absolutely. Right, right, right. I definitely agree with the points that you made, Romario. I think many folks on the call are just, on the Zoom right now, are just agreeing with a lot of what you've said, in terms of just handling the elements of mental health and wellness. And that's why, and, Darren has mentioned it, Romario, Bryan, about the need for environmentalism and a conscious awareness of environmentalism. So has Chris, because a lot of, if you even look at some of the portraits behind Chris, they are tapping into the beauty of nature. And I know we're discussing men's mental health right now. I just wanted to touch on this real quickly before we get to the last question for our panelists, and then just a little quick Q&A for our audience members with their questions. Just the need for just to be mindful of the mental health, the trends that we're seeing right now, because one of the things that's affecting us is the climate crisis, right? That's also has its own name / tagline right now. Exactly. It has its own movement right now where, because of everything happening with our environment, it's creating its own lane of mental health issues and ailments, right? And that's just I wanted to just take a moment and just realize and recognize that fact, because one of the constant and consistent themes on our Zoom tonight is the need for tapping into nature and the environment to help you boost your mood. Some of us who are living in colder climates / temperatures go through what we call seasonal affective disorder, right? Which is AKA SAD, which is, once that the shorter days come along and the colder temperatures, we have to retract to our inside activities and dwell by fireplaces and get that heat, that machine generated heat that dries out our skin so terribly, but is essential for our survival. And that these kind of things help to affect us as well, but also to help to counter that, we simply can go out and be a part of nature on good weather days, right? Make sure we're exploring that sunlight, right? So I just wanted to just tie in real quickly how that need for proper environmental practices is essential for our overall mental health as men, as women, as persons on this earth, because viewing and being a part of nature is one of the things that helps us to combat our ailments or problems or struggles with mental health. Because there's a reason why in winter beaches are essentials for those who still love sunlight and smell of salty air, right? There's a reason for that. There's a reason for even during summer months where people try to escape to wherever part of the world is cooler for them. There's a reason for that, because the environment plays a big factor in how we process mental health, issues and struggles, etc. I know a lot of us who are my friends on social media, no matter what time of year it is, they're finding some kind of wooded area, some kind of forest, somewhere to go to make sure that they're enjoying the outdoors. So definitely just wanted to touch on that. And there you go. Chris did mention, I paint things and have, and have mental breakdowns, right? That's just their tagline to guide you all to follow them on Instagram. We thank you so much for that, Chris. I do agree the environment is healing. Thank you, Christine. A mantra from Romario: I have to take care of myself. Only then would I be able to offer my true self to the people that needs me. Right? And I do see some other questions. We're going to get to them as soon as we start the Q&A. From Gavin, though, health is a state of complete physical, mental, and social being, and not merely the absence of disease or infirmity. So as men, in order for us to say we are healthy, we need to start talking about and taking care of our mental health. P.S. It's okay to have that cry, in therapy, via therapy, through therapy. Absolutely right, Gavin. And that's one of the things I just wanted to contribute. For me, let us not negate the fact of the benefits of proper therapy and counseling. Notice I said proper. I like to preface that kind of encouragement for those needs and services by saying proper, because just like with everything in life, the vehicle you drive, the house you live in, the communities you are a part of, the friendships you have, your place of employment or non-employment, depending on where you are in your life's chapters. These are all choices. These are all conscious choices for the most part. You gotta be able to also have the support network around you and find proper mental health care. All the choices that you make can include finding a right therapist/counselor, right? The one I read an article because I do work for an organization that oversees therapy and counseling in the US, across the continental US. And one of the articles we read based on our daily briefings for or work is that, there's a whole process of finding a therapist now, especially because there's been an increased and escalated need based on the year that we just went through, year and 10 months that we just went through, right? So finding a proper therapist is a part of your mental health wellness and journey, as men, as persons of color, as women, everybody on this call, right? And I wanted to touch on this other topic now as we are wrapping up our sections with our panelists before we get to a real quick audience Q&A. What advice would you give your younger self about mental health? And again, and we're going to have some audience members chime in. We definitely need to hear your voices. We'd like to hear your voices as well. Thanks for participating in the chat. But what advice would you give your younger self? And I know before Chris jumps on and I have crack a real quick joke about he's too young to tell his younger self anything, right? But I just wanted to say real quickly that this is one of those kind of mirror on the wall questions, one of those magic ball questions, crystal ball questions that if you could look back and tell your younger self something about mental health, awareness, and wellness, what is it? And I can easily start this way, the response to this, right? If I may. For me, that mental health is real, that mental illness is real, and it's there. And that, for the persons that you now know what mental illness is, that may have been impacted through trauma when you were growing up, this is a time now for you to find that kind of healing that you need, because a lot of us come from households that were broken. We didn't know why the marriages failed. We didn't know why the parents separated. We didn't know why the parents split, why we're products of single parent households, why this, that, and the third happened. A lot of us now know it's a lot of things: postpartum depression, anxiety, persons who are bipolar, schizophrenic, etc., and everything along the spectrum of mental health. We now know those terms because we were educated by it, right? Some of us either, some of us grew up with and without the internet. Hello, telling my age. So, we, and access to the internet, right? So, we now know what these things are, right? And that's what I would tell my younger self. These things exist. These are human phenomena. And one day in the future, you're going to learn about them and possibly even do a minor in them in college. So I'll popcorn it over to Christine. Let me hear your voice on this.
Yeah, so I actually just wrote in the chat, but growing up, I grew up extremely shy, and I never liked hanging out with younger kids. I always wanted to hang out with the adults, and I guess I took on so much too. Like, I was the eldest of my cousins and so forth. So I always felt the need to take care of other people. And I think, looking at younger Christine, I would just tell her that, like, nothing is wrong with you. Nothing is wrong with who you are. There's a lot of patterns to be, to relearn and unlearn, because again, we're coming from this colonial society, and our parents, like, they didn't know better, right? So I would tell her, you're trying your best. I love you. I'm proud of you. And you're going to get through it, because here I am now, and I have the Breadfruit Collective, and I'm making friends, and I'm having these tough conversations.
I was
Absolutely.
just thinking about this. I was just thinking about this question too, because it was my birthday yesterday, and my mother sent me 2 pictures of my school pictures from elementary school. And I was just looking at young Darren, and I was like, oh no, I just wanted to hug him so badly. So I would tell myself the same thing, Christine. I really relate to that. I'm also the oldest sibling, and We can't just now start to eat, huh?
Oh, they're like, we're having this party today. It's a Friday night. After this call,
Exactly.
we're turning up. But yeah, go ahead, Darren.
But yeah, I would just say, there's nothing wrong with you, there's just so much wrong with everything around you. I tell him that everything that they say is wrong with you, or that makes you weak, or that makes you to this or to that. Those are the things that actually make you the strongest. That being sensitive is a strength, that being empathic is a strength, that being caring is a strength. And yeah, that's a beautiful and rare thing. I wish I could tell myself that. I wish I
There
knew
you
that.
go. There you go. Thank you. Thank you. Popcorn it over now to Tarik. Tarik, what would you tell your younger self about mental health?
I guess I would say that someday you are going to become stronger than your former self. And I would probably add to that by also saying that mental health is no joke. It's serious, it's real, it's out there, because I feel like my younger self didn't quite understood the old concept of mental health and mental well-being. So I think I would advise my younger self that, there will come a time where you're going to get it right, even though you don't understand what is going on right now. And, just keep strong, keep going at it. And, eventually you're going to come out of it. So mental health is no joke.
There you go. Thank you. Thank you, Tarik. Thank you, Tarik. Brian, any commentary from you about a younger Brian and what he would know, you would want him to know?
So funny enough, just like Darren, my birthday was also this week. It was Tuesday. So you can tell my parents had a routine. So I guess I would tell my younger self, it's okay. I was a slow kid, so first I'd have to break down what mental illness was for like a week. And after that, I think it's all right to need more nurturing. I was a sensitive kid. I tell most of my guy friends, we tell each other I love you, and we hug each other. If we don't check in with each other once a week, we usually check in with a phone call. And I didn't know that until later, though. I wish I had knew this in elementary school or middle school, because I was always sort of bullied for it, and I didn't know how to express my true self. So I don't know if it'd be a question of telling myself about mental illness rather than just giving myself, just affirmations. You are loved, you are nurtured, you are beautiful, and it's okay that you see the world this way. It's okay that I just felt strong emotions early on, so I used to wander off, and I used to very much so live in like a dream state. And so just be having somebody to understand me. I think that's it. So yeah, affirming my younger self more so than scare myself with mental illness, because we can prevent that with nurturing, proper love and attention. And I firmly believe that.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you so much. I think that a younger Brian would have definitely found some insights from what you just bestowed upon us. Thank you. Thank you. Chris, so you want to take it away? I see you applauding.
Oh yeah, I was applauding Brian. Chris, what would I tell my younger self? I would say, Chris, you should grow a beard as soon as possible. That's the fastest way to success for you. Sometimes it's not any of these brilliant, insightful observations that the rest of the panels are making. For me, it would be grow a beard. But for real, I would say, Chris, you should get yourself a friend that you completely vibe with, because I really started understanding myself and, moving on, helping myself. When I started, talking about these things, I would say get somebody that you vibe with, open up a little bit more, and connect more with people, because that is ultimately what's going to help you. and of course grow a beard as soon as possible, because that really helped.
Oh gosh, oh gosh. Trust me, Chris. I can definitely identify with what you just said. I'm just now practicing growing mine. This is the longest this has been in my entire lifetime, thanks to the pandemic. So I may just keep riding that wave with you. Never too late. So I wanted to touch bases with Romario. I see Romario is ready to grab the mic from me. So go ahead.
No, I find the panel is very funny. I think Darren was really speaking to my younger self, like almost everything that he said. In addition to that, what his brother also mentioned, I think that is so powerful for me that I would tell my younger self positive affirmations, self affirmations that strong, that at that point in my life where I felt as though I was alone. Sometimes I wish people understood me. Sometimes I wish even my parents, would really see through me without me having to say certain things and all of that, that I can connect more with them. But even in the absence of that, I believe that I found a strength in myself to overcome. And as I would have mentioned through some of my own, with experiment with myself as to what really works for me. And I would say that I'm proud of him, the younger Mario. That I believe in you, and that I would always continue to believe in you, and you have the power over yourself. And with decisions that you make, and the people that you allow in your life are also the reason why you are here today. And I would give him an applause. Yeah.
Nice, nice. Thank you. Thank you for that input, Romario. We appreciate that so much. And, like I said before, we all contributed to this question about speaking to our younger selves and about the entire dialogue in general for tonight. Just trying to touch on why it would be essential for us to look back where we're coming from, kind of have those flashbacks, but not dwell on the trauma, not dwell on the shortcomings that we thought we had, not dwell on the imperfections and everything and the insecurities that we knew for a fact shaped our childhood, shaped our adolescence, and shaped our young adulthood or younger adulthood. But to also just remind ourselves that this work is possible to get to a place of healing. This the resources we have now, thank God for them, we can access them a little bit better, especially depending on where you live, and the work that we're collectively doing in our individual lives and as a part of our organizations. We're using that work to bring greater access to things that we need. One of them is tonight's focus, which is access to better mental health care, especially for our men. Right, so I can't thank the panelists enough for that input tonight. Very riveting dialogue, very encouraging. And I listen, for the persons who are on this call, I thank y'all so much. Usually in some of these conversations that are very hard hitting / heavy, we tend to start losing people somewhere throughout the line along the course. Y'all have stayed the course with us. Our numbers have stayed consistent with the amount of viewers that we have / participants. So we thank you for that. This is a testament to what we're doing to say that this is essential for our communities going and growing forward. I want to just touch on maybe 2 or 3 questions from our audience, because we did ask for your participation in this process. And I just want to acknowledge that, right? We'll touch on them real quickly as we start wrapping up tonight's proceedings. So I just wanted to say, and this was touched on too, as well, for our panelists. And, curious to hear the panelists' thoughts on the link between alcohol abuse and aggression / violence in men. What are our thoughts on that? In any one of the persons with the stats or the facts want to catch this one real quickly? And the entire panelists don't have to answer this one. It can be any 1 or 2 persons specifically, in the interests of time. So what are the links between alcohol use and abuse and the aggression and violence in men, seen in men?
It's just so pervasive, right? Like, I think folks use alcohol in the Caribbean. I know this because some members of my family, because I have a family foundation, I can't get specific, but some members of my family in Trinidad like to use alcohol in ways to that give them permission to feel things, but it also kind of like gives them permission to cause harm in ways that yeah uh, yeah really affect their families, their immediate family, in the long term. And so I see that as like a very systemic problem in the Caribbean, where we have so few mental health resources that can actually promote long-term, long-term sustainability for someone's mental health. Um, that alcohol is always just like a quick fix to just make you feel better right away. And also kind of like give you permission to feel your feelings in a way that doesn't necessarily scare you. Um, so yeah, I'm glad that you guys asked about alcohol. I know this question came up a few times in the chat, and something that we were thinking about and talking about too. Especially since we're talking about men's mental health, like, you know, it is a very gendered issue. And not saying that like women do drink a lot in the Caribbean as well, but yeah, this is a particularly difficult thing to untangle in the Caribbean because it's bound up with so many other inefficiencies in the government's response to mental health care needs. So we are going. I don't know of any Alcoholics Anonymous in the Caribbean. I know that faith-based organizations, from the research I've done, faith-based organizations do their own kind of substance abuse remediation and intervention that have not been independently reviewed. And honestly, Alcoholics Anonymous is a little problematic in and of itself, but we're gonna drop a resource list within the coming week. So that'll be name checked, because we will be looking at substance abuse resources in the Caribbean when we do this resource list. Oh, and we are running out of time, so let me stop.
Exactly. No, not a problem. Thank you for that, Darren. I'm going to pop on over to Christine. Just like Darren, I just want to reiterate that we're going to drop this resource list because this has been an impactful chat. So we want to drop a resource list to our participants tonight who registered and signed up and participated with us. And, you know, if you want to be a part of that resource list, definitely reach out to us. I've dropped almost all of our Instagram connect / social media connect / handles in the chat. All right, Christine, go ahead, my dear.
Yeah, so just adding on to what Darren said, our society in the Caribbean, and just being from the Caribbean, you know, like descendants of indentured servants and slaves, we're coming from a place of extreme pain and extreme hurt. And, you know, our resources are very limited in the Caribbean, even though we know the social issues that exist. And I think alcoholism and the way we get our aggression out, it's something that I guess people are seeing it as part of our culture because it's so common. However, it's up to us in a sense to kind of like break that cycle. And breaking cycle is something that takes a lot of work in of itself. And so I'm so grateful that we're having this conversation on mental health, because I feel like our generation, we have to take on so much. We're taking on the climate crisis, we're taking on the gender crisis, the LGBTQ conversation. It's so much. And I just want to encourage everybody to continue taking care of your health. And someone asked about the AA resource. In Guyana, there is a few, but again, given that the country, we have so many pervasive social issues, it's still not enough. But Darren and I are working on a list. And if anybody that's listening in, if you have resources that you're familiar with, in the Caribbean, in New York, that you want to share, we'll be happy to add it to the list.
There you go. There you go. Absolutely, Christine. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. We will be having that resource list to y'all shortly. Thank you. Now, do you think if given the opportunity and guidance on mental health issues, men would opt to partake in such activities? Right? Do you think if given the opportunity and guidance on mental health issues, would men opt to participate in such activities? And one of the things that the participants asked as well, how comfortable would men be speaking to a female therapist / counselor? I just wanted to real quickly tackle this. I would say me first and foremost that it was a yes for me in terms of being presented with that option as a man. because when you go through things like experiencing death and the stages of dying, that for me, experiencing that 6 years ago with my mother and grandmother passing in the same year, there was no way I was going to get through this without the friendship support, the family support that chose to stick with me and stick with us who just lost our mother and grandmother. But also I definitely needed what you know, the shrinks couch, right? I'm glad we have also moved away from calling therapists and counselors shrinks. You see, look at how essential we're now considering them, right? We some of us no longer refer to them as shrinks. But you know, that sitting with my therapist has definitely been essential to processing the stages of death and dying. That was one of the things that really shook me, you know, when it happened first happened 6 years ago, and in the same year, just months apart at that. I know that for me, you know, the options were presented and I took advantage of them, especially because I had a job that was able to pay for that through my benefits package, right? There was no way, absolutely no way I was going to let that pass me up, because that's one of the things Darren knows this about me because we're friends. And you know, the persons who are on the call, who are my family and friends as well, know this about me. Like, listen, I don't like paying for things that I'm not using. I have a gym membership. You best believe that membership is being used at least 3 times a week. We ain't got no, this pandemic, we ain't got, that's happening. We ain't got no time to be wasting our coins, because we now know who have our best interest at heart. So I'm a big believer. I was paying for these services in my benefits. I took advantage of them and used them, right? And that's one of the things that helped me just to cope and deal with my mental health struggles over the years, dealing with sadness and death and dying and the loss of loved ones. And you know, I know the question also asks if I had the opportunity to sit with a woman therapist, counselor, psychiatrist, etc., would I? Of course, why not? I did it for years with my mother, not only just to find some sort of replacement or some sort of stand-in for my grandmother and mother, matriarchs that are no longer here, but at the same time, why not? Right? I had absolutely no problem with that, and that's such a key question as well, because of how the field of therapy and counseling has now been highlighted and put under the spotlight. We're now seeing that there are also shortages in that field. Shortages that I always think they were there, but the fracture has now been highlighted owing to the pandemic, that there's a lack of women. I'm sorry, a lack of significant women presence in the field, lack of women of color, lack of Black women, lack of people who are culturally competent. You know, it's just because of the need, there's just been more, you know, these things have been brought to the forefront. So to answer the question, of course, I'll sit with a woman to discuss these, to discuss my mental health and awareness as a man. I have no problems with that. You know, like I encourage folks earlier on the Zoom that everything we do is a matter of choice, right? And we make a lot of choices and decisions every minute, every day. And one of those is choosing the right therapist and counselor, whether it be male, female, a trans person who's in the field. Listen, just ask for their credentials, licensed professional. That's what you're looking for first and foremost, to make sure that you're being guided in the right direction when you choose to seek those professional services. Because remember, where many of us are concerned, we're paying for those services. You want to get your money's worth as well. So that's just my short answer to that question. Any other one of our panelists to jump on that real quickly before we get to the last question of the night?
Just want to offer that, like, we just make it normal, you know. I think the way that it has become normalized for, I just did a presentation on Monday about violence in the Caribbean, and like, we say that violence happens in layers because if violence is normalized at the largest level of society, it kind of has a ripple effect. But I say all that to say that, like, good things can also be normalized too. Like, if more men start talking about, like, you know, seeking counseling or seeking like positive ways of getting their mental health under control, it'll actually have a ripple effect. So the more men that talk about this openly, encourage other men, it may not have a direct effect in the short term, but like, it does have a ripple effect in society. We just have to make it normalized. People make culture, culture doesn't make people.
There you go. Thank you for that input, Darren. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Definitely. Absolutely 100%. Thank you. One of my final questions for the evening. Somebody did post this one, which has a more clinical approach to the questioning. You know, we know peripartum depression, it affects women, but how does it affect men, or are men even affected after the birth of a child? Now, based on what I've researched on peripartum depression, this is the type of depression that happens during pregnancy or in the months immediately following pregnancy. So you have, of course, we all know about postpartum. You also have peripartum. And I would say, let me start by saying this, because in the interest of time, it ought to have some kind of, I want to say, significance, not impact per se, but significance on a man. And you know how that starts? By being stepping up and being an absolutely dedicated father. If you are helping to bring a child into this world, that's where that kind of phenomenon that affects women first ought to be of importance to you, because we have always heard this, which is kind of one of those old stereotypes: happy wife, happy life. We know all of those things, right? That connotates to a heterosexual relationship. We know that. Boom. But in terms of like having a happy and healthy mother, that should be an overall thing, period. Mentally, physically, emotionally, and spiritually. Because, this is it again with the choices. These are conscious choices we make to procreate and for the most part, I want to say that with a strong caveat, for the most part, a conscious decision to bring a child into this world. As men, we're tasked with not only being good fathers, but being present fathers and helping to work through our own traumas, either before, during, or while we have these children on earth. That's my commission and charge to persons, because when a woman goes through peripartum and postpartum depression, that can impact how she starts bonding with child, right? And we know one of the key ingredients of bonding with children once they are had is through breastfeeding. And, one of the frustrations I've seen over the years based on impacts and dealings with postpartum depression is that, one of the greatest frustrations of a mom is when she is gung-ho about breastfeeding and can't successfully do it because the baby is not latching on instantly. Things like those ought to be of good concern to the father as well, because think of it that the baby is waking up in the night. And, if the mother can't attend to its needs, what is the father going to be able to do? What kind of support are we going to be able to provide as men, right? And don't even think about it as an intimate partner relationship. Your sister could be having a baby. Your aunt could be having one. Your cousin could be having a baby, right? You remember, as persons who are male identified on the calls, these are the people that are going to become our nieces and nephews and cousins and brothers and sisters, right? How is that impacting us as men too? How are we lending our support to the people who are pregnant and stepping up and standing in the gap for them? Because like I said before, if you really do care, it starts with caring and empathy. First and foremost, if you really do care and are empathetic, you ought to be able to stand in the gap for the person who really needs you pre and post the baby shower, because clearly it doesn't stop there. You have a whole 18 years ahead of you to raise this child, right? So that would be my input on that it ought to be of significance to the male who are a part of this procreation process. As Bryan said, his parents, were active on a schedule, but it ought to be, a thing that you participate in as well, because the woman is responsible for the gestation period, that 9 months of bringing the child to fruition into this world. But also remember that there was procreation to help that happen. And then there is a follow-up to that delivery once the baby gets here. And that's an 18-year process. So this is why we're having the conversation like this on International Men's Day, is to get persons who are interested in becoming fathers or who already are, to get y'all ready for that type of work, because it's essential as well. Anyone of my panelists or any one of the participants want to chime in on this particular question about just what impact, how does the peripartum depression affects women? We know that, but how it affects men, or even, during or after childbirth. How is that affecting men? Go ahead, Darren.
So there's no universal consensus on really peripartum depression in and of itself, like what mechanisms cause it. Because it's different for each woman, like whether it's hormonal, whether it's just like an emotional response that's brought on by a life change independent of hormonal changes. So like it's a very like broad term. I'm sorry to be so clinical about this, but just want to kind of like, offer a good response to this. So men do experience some sort of change in, like they experience the birth of a child in ways that can affect their mood severely, but there is very little research into how this works for men. And the research that they have for women is even like wildly, like it's not like one conclusion. It's not like this is the mechanism for peripartum depression. So the answer is yes, it does vary by men, and the reasons vary by men. Of course, it's less hormonal because the man is not male, considering that, assuming that it's a cis man involved, he's not gestating. But yeah, there's needs to be more research. And I think this really shows some of the biases that are in the scientific community, that there's not more research on the peripartum depression for men who are involved in bringing a child into the world.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you so much for that input, Darren. And real quickly, I wanted to touch back into something Darren said earlier about this recent push and this most important push for an investment in human capital and infrastructure, human infrastructure, right? Because a part of that plan is to also ensure that fathers have paid family leave as well. We know the mother needs it. We know the mother must have it. That's goes without saying. It goes without question. How are we helping the fathers in this world to also benefit from that aspect of having paid family leave in order to bond with, allow themselves to bond with said child, right? That's also a part of what we were discussing earlier on the call. And for those of us who may have missed that conversation, that part of the conversation, this has been a recording. So we'll be able to issue this at a later date in conjunction with our resources list. And with that being said, I thank my illustrious panelists for being here tonight. Thank you to Chris and Romario, Bryan, Darren, and of course, Tarik, for being here on this Zoom tonight and for inviting me to be a moderator for the event. I can't thank y'all enough for this conversation. It is my first one heavily, intensively specific to mental health and men's mental health at that, because I am not a professional in this field. I just work with persons who are in this field, so I'm able to absorb some of their knowledge and intellect on this. So I thank y'all for allowing me to also broaden my horizons and step out into a different sphere of speaking on things of this nature. Thank y'all for this conversation. I just wanted to again wish folks a happy holiday season, happy, everything that you celebrate, and just take these thoughts and what you've learned here tonight with you on your journey into the future as men, as persons who are deemed to be so important and critical to the operation of our society, right? In conjunction with the women, and no matter what your gender identity, marker, sexual orientation, etc. is. We thank y'all for being a part of this call. And go ahead, Darren, go ahead.
Thank you all for being a part of this evening, and I really appreciate it. Thank you, Theo, for moderating, and we all want to give, if we can all give a round of applause to Christine and the Breadfruit Collective for making this happen. Christine, thank you so much for just thinking to do this and giving a platform for this really important discussion. Before we go, I just also want to thank the Indigenous peoples on the lands that we're all staying for being the stewards of the lands that we're now occupying. We didn't do land acknowledgement at the beginning, but just want to say, Indigenous people, we recognize that so much of our ability to work on these things and to take us into the future and liberate our communities is based on so much hardship in the lives of Indigenous peoples before us. So we want to acknowledge that before we leave this space.
Thank you for that, Darren. We definitely couldn't exit without acknowledging those key items on our agenda. We thank you so much for that. And of course, continue to celebrate yourselves, to love yourselves, to find the resources and help you need, to be in a circle, not a cage, when it comes down to your friendships and your relationships, and to continue to grow and prosper into just becoming the better versions and the best versions of yourselves possible. Can't thank my colleagues enough in Guyana, in Trinidad, across the Caribbean region and across the world, wherever you may be observing this Zoom from right now. Thank you for your participation. Your questions were enlightening and helped to carry the conversation along with the content that we prepared for tonight. So, we are just blessed for this moment. The Breadfruit Collective, follow them at the Breadfruit Collective all all across social media, starting with IG, Instagram, Glenn Family Foundation at the Glenn Family Foundation. You can find that, search for GLENN. You know, that name, it'll pop up across social media. You'll see Bryan and Darren attached to it, as well as the persons who are involved with the Glenn Family Foundation. You can always find the Caribbean Equality Project too at Caribbean Equality Project across social media, at Caribbean Equality on Twitter. And for each of our panelists, their handles are also in the chat and will be made available when we tag them in our posts on our respective social media platforms at the Breadfruit Collective and at Glenn Family Foundation. My name is Theo. It has been a pleasure to be the moderator of tonight's event, celebrating International Men's Day, specific focus on men's mental health. My pleasure to be here with y'all, and thank you for lending me your ears and your attention. Have a great night.
Bye, everybody.
Hi, everyone. Thank you.
Have a special night, everyone. Enjoy the
Yes.
evening.
Yes, yes, yes.
Take care,
Thank you.
guys.
Take care. Thank y'all. Thank y'all. Thank you. Thank you.
All right, KFC open till midnight. I gone. I was waiting. Y'all take y'all time. Talking about